6 o'clock now. I will call the meeting to order. Oh, sorry, not doing it proper. Call this meeting to order. I don't have much for remarks other than one thing I want to share, and I forgot to bring a little pamphlet at our HPPH meeting last week here in Perth Public Health. There was something we were talking about, and it is for the benefit of community overall, and the whole idea of if you've got people in the community, it doesn't matter what your status is in life. If you've got people you can share with when you've got problems, this and that. And it was really good information. And I commented about the fact that as much as the statements from the presentation make perfect sense, it probably becomes harder for lower income families to be involved in everything that goes on in the community. But it gave me the opportunity again, because I do this as often as I can, brag about the Brussels Fall Fair. And I talked about the fact that here you've only got a population of about 1,000 in the town, but you probably have about 700 people actually show up at the Fall Fair over the course of it. And I talked about the fact that they had all those blow up things where the slides, the obstacle courses and everything else. The firemen had put on their display there, and the kids could go in and do stuff, and it's all free. And it's there for the whole community to come in and share. And there were a lot of people around the table that were surprised that there's actually a fall fair that operates that way. That everything is just there for everybody to come in. And they thought that was really good. And in fact, Laura Hayward is our deputy doctor of health, and she lives in Huron. And she talked about Brussels, and she says, and so she expanded on mine. She says, yeah, and when you have a parade there, she says, if the parade starts at 6, you know what? We can show up at 5 too. And there's a spot for everybody, and everybody enjoys it and has a good time. And apparently she used to live down Toronto. She says, you'd have to get there 6 hours before and then not even get a good seat. So I think that the staff actually wanted to look into it and have some more information, because they really thought that was a model that could be good for other communities and wanted to try and promote what Brussels actually do. So I felt good about that. I need a motion to reconvene into open session. Can I get a mover and a seconder, please? Moved by Councillor Deal, seconded by Councillor Fisher, that the Council of the Municipality of Huron East reconvene into open sessions at 6:04 p.m. All those in favor? And motion carries. For reporting out of the closed session, Council went into a closed session to discuss personal matters about identifiable individuals, proposed or pending disposition of land in Seaforth, and potential litigation affecting the municipality. We would like to acknowledge that the land we stand upon today is the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee, and the neutral peoples. Can I get a mover and a seconder to confirm the agenda, please? Councillor Wilby, Deputy Mayor, that the agenda for the regular meeting of Council dated January 14th of 2025 be adopted as circulated. All those in favor? And motion carries. Is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest from any member of council for this portion of the meeting? Seeing none. Can I get a mover and a seconder for the minutes of the previous meeting? Councillor Newell, Councillor Chartrand, that the Council of the Municipality of Huron East approve the following council meeting minutes as circulated. That's the regular meeting of December 17th of 2024. All those in favor? And motion carries. And there was also a Committee of Adjustment public hearing on December 17th of 2024. And I'm going to take the approval as they were both the same if you want 2 separate pages. Sorry. Number 8, under the consent agenda, are there any requests to remove an item from the consent agenda? Councillor Fisher.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The one about the blood plasma, please. I think it's number 1.
Yes, it is.
Thank you.
Would you like to make a motion on that?
I think Toronto asked for a letter of support. I would like to make that motion. Thank you.
Okay, and second by Councillor Deal. All those in favor? And motion carries. Is there any other item that anybody would like to have pulled? Seeing none, can I get a mover and a seconder to accept items 8.2 to 8.5 be received for information? Councillor Wilby and Councillor Dalton, that the consent agenda 8.2 to 8.5 be received. All in favor? Carried. Under public meetings, hearings and delegations, 9.1, Stephen Matt Haney Reed, property severance, Birch Street, Seaport. Matt?
Yeah.
Are you the speaker?
The speaker.
Okay, come forward, please.
Well, thank you for putting us on the agenda here tonight, and just like to go over this severance that Stephen applied for back in the spring, and it was basically turned down because turned the application down because what they said would have to happen with Duke Street would have to be extended to the east, and that there would have to be a planner to make suggestions and probably draw up designs, and so he has decided he's not going to spend that money until we know if we can get a severance for that property. And I think that's been the problem with that property, is that people have tried to sever or try and develop it or whatever, and there's always roadblocks put up, and so we're not gonna do anything until we know if it can be severed, so. So I come here tonight to explain. Oh, yeah, and they said that the land would be landlocked. Well, I come here tonight to explain that I don't believe it will be landlocked. And so the road on the south side of the Wilson property is called the Dump Road, and it has Birch Street Road on there as well, which it has been named. And it's been there before my time. And on that road, it was a busy road, and back in the day, there was an abattoir run by Bev Christie. Rieger Trucking had a yard next to the abattoir on the east. Both businesses were on the south side of the road. Also, on that road, there was thousands of tons of gravel came out of on that road from two pits, Nixon's pit and the Doy pit. Also, tons of garbage were taken to the landfill, and then tons of clay trucked in to close it off. So it is more than just a farm laneway or a driveway. It's been a road for many, many years. Back when Seaforth, the dump road was always maintained and kept up by the town of Seaforth, and then here in east to the present day. Now, at the end of Birch Street, there is a sign pointing right saying emergency service and Hall Road. So as you follow Birch Street, Dump Road, whatever you want to call it, around to the east, McPherson Ave enters the road halfway along the road. That makes an access to the east part of the Wilson property for a severance to be possible. So that land is not landlocked because there's a road right there, Birch Street. And they told us that it would be landlocked until there was till Birch Street was extended to the east. Not true.
Barry, I might need a little reference here. So we are talking up at the end of the road for the cement plant, which there was numerous deals where we tried to get that extended and it never happened. And is there emergency access only, I believe? When you get to the end of Birch Street, you can turn right and then turn left to get to the emergency access into the Bridges subdivision, which used to be the dump road.
That was the intent of that lane.
So why is the Bridges road allowed to be there? Because there was never a road there. Because we farmed all that land.
I'm not sure I can answer that, Matt, but I'll turn that over to the CEO.
The McPherson Avenue isn't intended to carry on through to Bridges. It's meant to be an emergency access as part of that subdivision agreement. So it would be gated. It wouldn't be an access road. It would just be emergency access point. So not a formal. The dump road as well, it's not, I mean, it's a laneway, it was an access point to the dump road, but it's not a full road allowance, it's only half of a road allowance, so it's not the full 66 feet. Just a couple comments I just wanted to add.
Why is it called Birch Street?
It's probably not officially called Birch Street, but
It's what's on the map.
yeah, it's an unopened road allowance though.
So why does that make that land landlocked?
Anything that doesn't have an open road allowance to it is considered landlocked.
What a joke. That road had, did you hear what I said about that road?
Matt, I'm not disputing the fact that there was traffic on the road in the past, but if it's not an official road according to the municipality at this point, then it can't be considered a roadway and it would be landlocked. Now, is there another way around this? I'm not sure. I have a rough idea of where we're talking about now. Unfortunately, the photocopy didn't do me real good justice to try and understand the whole situation that we were talking about. I don't know where you are actually hoping to come in from.
Down the dump road. Birch Street. It's being used all the time. So if it's not a road, why does McPherson Ave come right out to it?
Barry, does the pathway between both sides of the north and south side of the street for the cement plant, is that Huron's responsibility, or is that just on their property and they have a roadway?
Are you talking north and south portion from Birch Street to the edge of McPherson?
That piece, or you're talking about the piece in between the two plants?
I'm talking about the piece in between the two plants.
That's our street.
That's our street right to the back of the first plant, or the back of the
Right
plant,
to the checkerboard, yes.
and then it stops there. And there used to be a way back in through there to get to the dump, but that was just temporary access while the dump was in operation.
Basically, it would be the dump laneway, I guess.
It's
And
used for-
that's going back before my time, that's for sure. So I would suggest that if you want a legal interpretation of what that rate is, I'd have to agree with Brad that it's on an open road allowance. If it is technically called road allowance.
So why do McPherson's get to, or why does the Bridges and the McPherson Ave get to use it?
They don't get to use it.
They do. It's open right onto the road.
Coming in from the bridges.
You can drive through it.
You can drive right
Yeah.
through it.
We drive right
Yeah,
through it.
so it's
It's not maintained lands.
yeah, and
Who maintains it?
no idea.
Who plows the snow?
We do.
I know who's
Is
been
that because
maintaining it
is
for
that
many
because it's
years.
an emergency access?
Because it's emergency access.
Okay. Larry?
I think a simple explanation then that would be that it is a service road, an emergency road. We have the same thing up here at the arena. Or if you come from Briar Hill, there's a hedge and there's a roadway up. That's an emergency access to the back of the arena, which takes you, just another emergency access. I agree with you 100%. This has been a thorn in my side for years. This is an emergency road. I get it. I understand what they're talking about. And that's also, they've been allowed to tie on there, I think, because bridges needed an emergency access. So they came back out to the north, back through, we'll call it the dump road, back onto the Birch Street. But I don't get the landlocked. I agree. If you're going up Birch Street towards the cement plant, it's right there. The property's right there. How is it landlocked?
We want to sever the east side of it, Larry. And that's what they're saying is landlocked.
I think if we had kept our nose out of it, but we didn't. I think part of the plan was, and you'll be aware of this, was we wanted to bring the laneway straight out from Bridges, right?
Correct.
And then line it straight up, so that left that chunk of land in here. But I think part of the deal was, at that time, I think we were dealing with design concrete. We wanted water, sewer, we wanted the whole 9 yards. He didn't agree to it, but he said he would sign a letter saying that if they developed the property in the day, they would pay the shot. But they didn't need it for property to develop. And we turned that down. We wanted them to pay for the services up to and around. So yeah, this has just become an issue that's. The bureaucracy has got too much into it, and as far as I'm concerned, I don't disagree with straightening the road out. I don't disagree with that at all. But we did have an agreement, it was never finalized, that, I believe Ken Hines said the day, but it's a different company now. Said, I will sign a letter of intent that if I'm gonna develop that property for plant or whatever, I'll extend the water, I'll extend the sewer, I'll put everything up in there that you want me to do. But I don't want it for that, I want it for storage. And that got turned down at the state. That's one of the many conversations we had here. One of the many conversations we had. Redrawn lines and who pays for what and, yeah.
I remembered the conversations, Larry. I thought we had finally come to an acceptance that we would let them put a pathway in. It wasn't gonna be paved or anything, going straight east. But if anything was gonna happen other than using it for a parking lot for the parts out of the cement plant, that at that point, he was then going to be obligated to do the water and sewer. And I thought we had come to that agreement.
He agreed that he would, if they decided to put a plant or something on the property. He would do it at the time. But he said, they signed that letter of intent that they would do it. And we did not accept it. When they put the road in, I think we wanted minimum services put in the road. We didn't want paved and gutters and everything else. We wanted it serviced up to the end that they could do what they wanted to do. That was back in the day, and I think we were also dealing with bridges there too, but, yeah, we were. At the same time,
Wasn't part of that deal that Design Concrete wanted to buy part of the Wilson Farms?
well, that's what brought it on, yeah.
But they never did buy the Wilson Farm.
Well, because this stuff kept coming up, like he spent $50,000 on lawyers trying to get it done.
You guys bought the Wilson Farm, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
and we're not going down that path,
But he
because
does
it's
it
been
best.
down many a time.
So, see where they're coming from, so.
There would be something happen to it, you would let a severance go through for that east parcel of land. And we can use that emergency road just real easy, and we won't be doing it as an emergency. If there's an emergency, we'll just back off and get out of the road. We're not hard to get along with, but that thing has been there forever and ever and ever.
And certainly the one behind the arena has been there forever
No,
also.
it hasn't,
Well, been there a long
No,
time.
no.
That pathway?
no,
Briar Hill? Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's not
It has-
real notice when you drive by, you see emergency, you
hedges.
see a sign.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
tall hedges.
but it
Yeah.
got put in, Larry, after the development started, it was not there back in the day.
No, it was part of the development, but yeah, when the laws.
This has been there,
This is an existing road. Path, whatever you wanna
Pathway.
call it.
But that's the problem. It is not an actual legal roadway.
But it's named for.
So if you wanted to
Yeah,
extend bridges, my understanding was, and Barry, please, correct me if I'm wrong here, but if there was going to be any extension to bridges into the Wilson property to have access to any of those lots, the bottom line is the water and sewer had to be brought up to that point.
I believe you're correct. Anything, any development within that Wilson land. Would possibly tie back into the subdivision eventually, it could. But that wasn't a criteria of it, but there's a lot of moving parts that. Depends how you wanna sever it, you gotta see the plan, you gotta see what. And as far as the laneway going up beside, and I believe that's what it was in the day, a laneway back to the dump. Correct me if I'm wrong, so that's before my time. But it's not technically a road, and I'd have to visit the development agreement to see what it says in it about that access or the, I would say emergency access. To the bridges.
that road originally was extended from that Lloyd Eisler Street, that's where it went up through there. That was the original road. And it's been a road, nobody called it a farm path.
But it doesn't matter what they called it, if it officially was never passed as a road by the municipality, then it's not an official road.
Have you heard of grandfather clauses?
Yeah, I have, but this is not
And
one.
this happens lots of times, somebody that has been on a piece of property or whatever, I'm not gonna get into a whole lot of details. Eventually they own it.
Not municipal property.
No.
They play with different rules.
No. The rules are exactly that. They're the rules. I don't have any problem with you owning the property and developing the property, but if we've got something set in place that has to happen before that, then we need to follow those rules.
We're not gonna spend all that money to do that if we cannot sever that property. That's what comes first. Might as well be upfront with you.
So what would it take to change path in the road? That's what I was gonna ask. Gravel road.
We can make it into a road, but the thing is you have to have road access, not landlocked, and you can't have a piece of property, to the best of my knowledge, and only get to this corner here and not have roadway in front of it. To put any amount of roadway in front of it so that you got access onto it, then the sewer and water had to be connected up to the end of Birch Street to get to that property. That's the whole underlying issue right there. I don't have any problem with the fact that if you want to turn it into a roadway, that's fine, but if you're gonna sever off this parcel. The whole reason why it never got done in the past is because we had to understand, any future development that was gonna happen, you had to have the services brought up to those properties at that time. Because down the road, somebody could be doing something here and then forcing a whole bunch of other people to do stuff when they weren't ready or willing to do it. So you bring them up to at least your property line. That was the catch. It was the same problem with the cement plant, same problem with bridges.
So if we ever want to develop this, which I think is in our best interest, we need to find out an answer for this, or we're gonna be sitting forever. It's landlocked, it's done, we're not getting any tax dollars.
Or the whole thing just stays as farm field.
Right, but
Yes.
if we have people, this isn't the first group coming to us for this, we need a solution once and for all, regardless. To fix this so that we can get development, or we can't.
So absolutely, at this point, if you want, you can make any request to staff to bring back information so that you fully understand the situation. Absolutely, that's appropriate.
And I think that's exactly where we need to be.
Okay, so you're asking for staff to bring back a report to explain to all of council the situation we've got here and what it would take to change it.
Correct, so we're all brought up to speed and what it would take to actually unlandlock, whatever the proper word is,
Okay,
to make it go forward, so we could develop.
okay, Larry?
Let's get some stuff out on the table here first. Number one, as alluded to earlier. Design Concrete agreed that at the time of building, they would extend the services into the property area that they were going to sever, okay? Number one, he agreed to sign a letter of that. The department, or our planning department said that agreement can be registered on title, so. Matt comes along and says, I'm gonna develop it, you're on the hook for everything that's got to go into it. You can't go back and say, well, that isn't what I agreed to, that's titled on property.
Right.
If you apply for a building permit on that property, and it has to be serviced with water and sewer, you're gonna be on the hook to service it, that's just the way it is. So let's just make that perfectly clear, and that part of the problem was with a Design Concrete, for example. I have no problem agreeing to that. I don't want it for that. But I'm not gonna spend $200,000 to service a chunk of land to pile slats on that I will never use.
Sure.
And when I do want to use it, okay, then I'll bite the bullet and I'll run my services up. I've got a letter of intent. It's there. I'm gonna do it. Like I said, I would. And it's registered on title. So whoever buys that property duly gets that investigated. Yep, there's an agreement on title that this property has to be serviced if you want to develop, blah, blah, blah. There you go. So let's make that perfectly clear. And part of the problem was the road thing, I think, and I don't forget where bridges come into this, because it was still just an emergency. For a second outlet, I maybe they changed it to a second entrance to bridges from this side.
No.
But at that time, it was just, they were gonna move it from down here at the end of Birch Street up further to square it off, is what they were gonna do, instead of that little jog like this.
But there was more to the story of that, and part of the reason they weren't gonna do the original jog was because then Bridges wanted the whole sound fence, because they said that was going to be more of an issue because of the traffic, or potential traffic could move along that area. So, and And it made more sense to actually square it off the other way.
Which is fine.
Yeah.
I know we had that.
But I do have a mover, with a motion on the floor to, have staff bring back all the information so council understands the whole situation of where we are and how we got here and what it would possibly take to turn it into a roadway is the request, if I understand. And do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Second by Councillor Chartrand. Any final questions before I call the vote? All in favor?
Oh, just a question. Double check with the county before, if you're gonna get knocked off the county right off the bat, don't waste your money.
Well,
I'm
staff,
just saying, you put in your application and if it's a no from even from the get-go here, don't waste your cash.
Shay spends a day a week in the office here, so I'm pretty sure our staff will contact her.
I'm just saying, that's definitely just,
That's why this thing is never developed.
I've been involved in a lot of the talks and I'm not gonna blame any one person because we had two parties that could never, ever get to an agreement. One would agree to something, then the other person would say no. Then the other person would come up with an idea and the first person would say no, and it went back and forth for 2 decades now, trying to get it resolved. Is that about the right time frame?
yeah,
I think it would develop a lot better if they weren't hooked with the whole pump farm.
Could very well be, but let's get the answer to the roadway
Okay,
solved first. And we'll let you know when we've got the information, Matt.
do we come to that,
You can
meeting?
come to every meeting you want to.
So
but we will
can
let you know.
notify when the information is.
We will let
available.
you know when the information is presented to council.
Okay, thank you for listening and
Thanks,
go
Matt.
from there.
Okay. I am down to number 11, motion for appointment to court revision for the Nicole Municipal Drain. Should I get a mover and a seconder, please? Moved by Councillor Dalton, or sorry, Beal, and second by Councillor Dalton. That Alva McClellan be appointed to the Court of Revision for the Nicole Municipal Drain under the direction of the Township of Morris Turnberry to be held on Tuesday, February 18th of 2025. All those in favor? And motion carries. Under reports and recommendations, 12.1 annual multi-year accessibility plan.
I didn't really have any comments on it. It's just our annual plans that we're required to approve. The county's already approved theirs, so then they just requested the lower tiers submit their approval afterwards as well, so everybody's approved the plans.
Any comments or questions on the information? All those in favor?
I need to move for a second, sorry.
I didn't ask for one, sorry. Mover and second, Councillor Deal and Councillor Newell. All in favor? Motion carries. Thanks, Shay. 12.2 Child Care and Early Years Programs and Service Agreement. Can I get a mover and a seconder, please? Deputy Mayor and Councillor Deal, that the Council of the Municipality of Huron has considered the bylaw authorizing the mayor and clerk to sign a service agreement with the County of Huron for the Vanastra Early Childhood Learning Center. I did have one question. I did not read the whole thing verbatim, but is this the same agreement where occasionally we get funding to do upgrades and stuff like that? Is this the same one?
Yeah, there's provisions within that sort of funding agreement that I forget the actual appendix it's in. There's a capital requirement, so we can apply for capital dollars and we'll fund it. So it's kind of that kind of, you have to apply and just flow that.
Okay. But this is also where the funding came to help out all the families in the month of October for,
Correct.
yeah, okay, all right, thank you. Councillor Fisher.
thank you, Mr. Mayor, to Brad, please. Why are we signing a new agreement? There was, I think, 2 years left on the previous one, and now we're dropping that and signing a 5-year agreement?
I think it's within the report.
They made changes to various schedules in the agreement and they removed some of the schedules, so because of the substantial changes to those schedules, a new agreement was put into place.
Is that because of the $10 daycare?
It's part of it.
It's part of it, yes.
And are we, like I've heard on radio, a lot of daycares are dropping out of the $10 agreement because the annual increases they get don't cover annual costs. Or is there some concern there on our part or not?
I would say yes, I would say that, and I think I'd wait a little bit, because I think they're actually revisiting the entire program to kind of figure out, because I think they're aware of that, so that's the information I've heard. Is that there's kind of gonna be a rejig of how that whole program is working. I don't know what's gonna rejig, but. And if it doesn't, then I think we probably would, we want to start maybe making some delegations to. Maybe it's the Ministry of Education that wants us to say. Well, guys, you gotta keep up with costs here, you know, we can't keep going out of pocket. So. I'm hoping the province. Will come to the table because they're aware of it, and all I've heard is that they're looking at the program. And that's the best
Yeah, that's-
information I got right now.
So do we have an avenue to get out of this agreement, if we so desire? I don't remember hearing that when I was listening to it.
Well, you can get out of the agreement, but you won't get any funding from the county. So,
Or ask to, okay,
yeah,
no, yeah, okay. Thank you.
yeah.
Councilor Chardra?
I do want to stay in this agreement because, over the years, the county has paid for toilets, new flooring, new windows, air conditioning, so
Yeah.
you definitely want to stay in this program.
Yeah, they have certainly treated, the daycare in Manassas very well, but they also know it's got a good reputation too. All those in favor of the motion? Motion carries. Number 12.3, fees and charges bylaws update. Can I get a mover and a seconder, please? Moved by Councillor Chartrand, second by Councillor Deal, that the council of the municipality of Huron East consider the bylaw for 2025 fees and charges. Any comments or questions on that? Deputy Mayor.
I'm just gonna ask, through you to Jessica, so have you made the changes that we discussed?
Yes, so just so everybody's aware, cemetery charges have asked that Mount Pleasant and Cranbrook remain at their 2024 burial plot fee. And that Brussels goes up to their increased rates as laid out in the report. Staff were fine with that, so if it's fine with council, then it's just gonna be broken out that Cranbrook and Mount Pleasant are at the $850 burial fee as they were in 2024. I do have the updated schedule, so.
So is that burial fee or?
Burial plot, yes, yeah.
There was only one thing that kind of jumped out at me because I didn't know all the facts and figures of what goes on there, but why is there a different charge for different road depending on where you are in the? Like the penthouse? You
Yeah,
pay as
exactly.
much?
I think so.
Where the shade trees are.
It didn't really explain that during the report, but anyways, okay. All those in favor of the motion as it was read? That was for the new fees. Motion carries. Thank you. CAO draft budget presentation.
I'm gonna move up there.
We take a break first.
Yes, you can take a break if you need.
Yes, we have a 5-minute break like I said.
Okay.
Diane's gonna beat you there.
I'm just gonna.
Hard work.
Be able to bring the slides up, Jessica?
These are the same slides that are there, but.
2 more minutes.
Give it a bunch.
Questions?
Alongside.
Harder to go through the county. And for the one, we don't provide much more things. So where do you cut it in? Well, I see. Yeah.
So it's discretionary.
Just-
Very good. The council.
Perfect. We'll move on to the next slide there, Justin, please. So, you guys have seen, this table before. I just kind of keep bringing it forward, just kind of helping council understand where their tax rate and their tax dollars kind of stand on a sort of surrounding municipal basis. Get a sense there where the range is. Talk a little bit about Central Huron in terms of, you know, they also have a fairly significant income stream through the casino program. So that's of value. Next slide, please. This is still using 2024 property tax dollars because tax rates haven't been set. I can't give you the distribution, but it gives you a sense. So pretty much 50 cents of the dollar is for the municipality. The rest goes to the county or the school board or the education program. So 50 cents of every dollar, tax dollar, is what the municipality uses. And then again, you know, I will go through all this in a long list, but it's a list, and we still have on our task list, once we kind of get to the point of the next budget stage, we'll try to have what we call a cheat sheet for you guys to basically provide all the information of all this, so that'll help you if you get any inquiries with respect to the budget. But we do provide a fairly extensive amount of services to the municipality. So that next slide there, Jessica, please. There's a fairly extensive list of services that we provide. And at the end of the presentation, or closer to the end, I've actually got the updated distribution of those services based upon the municipal portion of the levy. What's not included in your municipal service, next slide please, is your water and wastewater service. Building services that are self-funded. Water and sewer services are through your water and sewer rates that are billed out individually to those customers. And then the C4 BI has its own individual BIA levy. So they kind of fund themselves through that levy that's assigned directly to those businesses within the BIA. So we'll get into some of the major influences. This is fairly consistent with what we talked about a little bit at the budget workshop, a bit updated. So we have our staff wages, cost of living was 2.1% from the previous year. We had some changes to our fire administration that ended up looking at about a 1.1% levy increase. Thankfully, the OPP cost went down. We're looking at about a 1% increase collectively on their billing, which is basically a negligible levy increase for all matters. But we were looking at a 3% levy impact until the province came forward and provided some funding to kind of offset that. So the new billing model basically looks a little bit better in terms of where we were, like I said, a month ago. Insurance came in reasonably well, so we're looking at about a 5% increase on our insurance. So we're doing a little bit better on insurance. It's not in that 15% range that it's been historically in the past. So kudos to staff in terms of working with our insurers in terms of doing a bit more risk management. So and having some good practices so we get a better rate. So we've had, knock on wood, we haven't had as many claims, so our claim history is looking better.
Councillor Fisher.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. To Brad, please. Does that 5% increase, does that include hacking insurance?
Cyber insurance? Yes.
Cyber, thank you.
Yes, yeah, it does, yeah.
We still have that coverage.
We do, yeah.
I heard before it was hard to get.
It's hard to get if you don't have it already, but once you've had it and you keep maintaining it, they can't take it away from you. Unless of course you don't do something in terms of terms and conditions, but we've done a lot in the last, I'm gonna say probably year, maybe even 2 years. We've been doing a lot of work with respect to our cybersecurity, and amongst some of the frustrations some of you have experienced, I know, in terms of accessing things, but it's all for the better good. From the standpoint of cybersecurity. So staff are being trained. We have a training program module that's in-house, so we've done a lot of work with them as well as our IT supplier, meeting the requirements of the insurance company in terms of the minimum requirements they require for us to have cyber insurance. Good question.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you to Brad. Brad, when you're talking about insurance, where do we stand with insurance for parades?
So it's a good question, and I think Lisa, she's not here tonight, she's skiing in Mount Tremblant or whatever I believe it is. But she is making some inquiries to how that's covered. I know it came up in some conversations, and I don't have an answer today.
Well, that's fine.
We'll sort it out.
Okay, thank you.
In terms of the capital levy itself, so we've always talked about capital levy being 4.2%. And I'll kind of talk about it in the next slides, but I did reduce it to 2.6% only because I'm trying to get your municipal levy increases over the next 5 years somewhat kind of consistent and not so variable. And so we were able to kind of pull it down to 2.6. I'm not suggesting that we stay at that permanently. You'll see later on that we actually have a pretty significant capital levy, but it gets caught by some operational cost savings. So working between operational capital and trying to work between that to make sure we have consistent levy increases. And we can still functionally achieve all the capital requirements with that 2.6% levy. Seaforth Lions School, so council had made the direction that they were going to operationally fund the Seaforth Lions for the pool operations, so that represented a cost increase. Council remuneration, same as staff, 2.1. We had a fairly significant increase on council conferences, just to kind of make sure that the conferences budget was appropriate. I think there was some confusion as to how that was, so council revisited that. Fairly significant, not much on the levy, but a fairly significant increase. That being said, total levy impact was about 7.1%. Again, that's not thinking about any of the operational costs. So that's just looking at these influences in themselves alone. And again, when we talked back at the budget workshop, at that time, we were looking at roughly about 12.26. So significantly pulled back on terms of that. So we did some staff kind of went through and did a good rehash to kind of make things improvements. So kudos to them.
Brad, before you go to your next page.
Sure.
My only concern is, with the conversation that I had with Lisa when she went to the province about the OPP costs, was that, they needed to pick up the tab for this year, and we'd have to figure out what was going on for next year, but we needed more than 2 months' notice to do an increase of that nature. And at least if we had a full year, we could figure out where we were gonna be. Now, if I understand correctly, what the province is picking up this year is all the retroactive.
Yeah.
And without the retroactive, what would be the next increase if you've got a guesstimate going forward? Are we back to that same kind of 1% levy again next year?
I would doubt that. I think we typically been looking at about, cost of living.
Okay,
Depending upon OPP contracts tend to be a little bit higher than cost of living when they get into negotiations, but you're in that realm of ballpark, so that 3 to 5%, depending what the cost of living is at the time. It's generally what the increases have been over the last 3 years, at least since I've been here anyway.
okay, so the only thing I want to caution before we pass a final budget is that, since we at the moment got from 12.26, which we had a report on 6 or 8 weeks ago, down to 7.1, and I realize this is not the final budget overall, but we might want to put a little bit of buffer in there, for what the potential increase could be next year. Because we may not be able to go on and call it the same counter year after year to have them pick up the tab.
Yeah, certainly can. That's something the council wants to consider.
We could try.
I will always make the phone call. No guarantee it'd be successful second time around. Okay. Oh, sorry, John. Go ahead.
Yeah, just for the COLA wages, I think we all have to be aware too that in the past 2 years, we've added probably close to over, almost $1 million, 800,000 in salaries. So, sure, COLA is only 2% or whatever, but we've added 6 or 7 positions here, and we gotta be careful, or at least cognizant, I guess, of what we keep increasing, because it's costing us money as we go.
We'll flip to the revenues now there, Jess. So again, this, not much change on this, other than, Councillor Chartrand had noted about the vibrancy fund. As another revenue stream, so I added that to this, list. But we obviously get our OMPF funding, that's meant to be offsetting some of those services that were downloaded to the municipalities from the province, so that's, that was a 10% increase, which represents about 1.1% on the levy. OCIF funding, this is not really a levy-based funding, this is a capital program funding. So you guys take your OCIF, the gas tax and the aggregate funding, and you put it into your roads and bridge reserve. And you use that to fund all those projects. And generally, for the most part, you use all or not quite all of it, on an annual basis. So you've got a fairly healthy road and bridge reserve because you've been accumulating over the years, but it's not sustainable long term in terms of all the capital projects, but you're in a reasonably good shape there. With user fees, of course, you got user fees, they're generally indexed to the best we can from a standpoint of cost of living. Obviously, a $5 user fee charge, we're not going to increase by the $5 and 5 cents. We'll just kind of do those more over a longer period of time, but that's kind of where we're at. So some other municipal contributions, you got some partnerships with some municipalities, both in your fire and your recreation. I mentioned the vibrancy fund, taxation's obviously your other revenue source. And then Huron County is a funding source as well from a standpoint of our daycare operation. We talked about that a little bit earlier in the meeting with that agreement. So the net levy impact from revenue sources is, it'll bring things down to about, it's kind of about a minus 1.16 worth of revenues. The other piece that gets a little bit more complicated is assessment growth. So assessment growth does not necessarily mean direct new revenue. What it means is that the net assessment or the weighted assessment across the entire municipality, as it grows, you're distributing that levy over a larger assessment value, right? So it can have the impact it basically does is it can help kind of buffer levy increases. That's the best way that I can probably put it. So you might get, we looked at sort of the estimates that we were getting from MPAC early or sort of late last year. Looks like probably an extra $200,000 worth of revenue. So that'll again help kind of buffer that levy a little bit. So we don't have the, sorry, if I just finish the slide, then we'll go to questions. We don't have the tax calculations and the assessments all calculated. I've got the information from MPAC. I prefer to wait for my treasurer to come on board. They'd be much better at determining how to calculate out all the various weighted assessments. So we'll do that. Sorry.
Councillor Chartrand.
So just back up a bit for revenues, where it says other municipal contributions. Where in revenues do we show our revenues that we make at the arenas and the rec centers?
But in terms of user fees?
Yeah.
That's in, like, where do we say that? That's up above user fees. Generally, that's COLA.
So they're all lumped into that one category.
Yeah, they're all.
Not broke out into. Okay.
The only one that we don't necessarily have the ability to do full COLA increases on is the daycare one, because it's restricted by that.
Yeah, that
CBO
freeze,
agreement.
yeah.
Yeah.
Good, thanks.
We'll revisit the deficits. You gave the budget numbers that I presented to you tonight. They do not address the deficits at this point. Certainly those are the deficits that exist. Both in the BMG, the SDC, the Brussels Cemetery, and the C4 fire. We continue to defer these things. We talked about options. We talked about the working capital. We talked about using annual surpluses. We talked about reducing it through taxation or continuing to defer. Talked a lot about the challenge with putting it, just as you might say, is we drew the money out of working capital. That's how that was all funded. The challenge being is if we actually leave it that way, we keep short cashing ourselves. So when we're expending dollars and we haven't got the revenue coming in from taxation, because we're paying out the county and the school board as well as our own expenses, we sometimes go into a negative, so we use our line of credit and we pay interest. So you always kind of want to have a nice healthy cash reserve. They call it working capital. I don't know why accountants call it that, because it's nothing to do with capital. It's capital, I guess it's capital from a standpoint, it's in dollars, but it's not an asset purchasing capital. It's not a reserve for that purpose. It's a cash flow reserve. So we can keep shortfalling that, but that's costing us money as well and interest. You know, we've had some conversations too about some other options to manage that deficit, and maybe we'll just kind of hold tight until we figure out where that ends up, and maybe we'll have some solutions that will present themselves. In terms of the grant program, we presented this to council. We earmarked 25,000. We haven't defined what the grant program is going to look like. We've had some grant requests so far, and we'll keep passing those through. Council will hopefully make a decision on what grants they're going to contribute to. It's an increase from previous years, but it's also more money is being available to grant to other organizations because we now no longer fund the Lions Seaforth Lions pool through that same funding mechanism. So, and they used to take $10,000 to $15,000 of that, $20,000 to $25,000. So that's what's in there right now. Council wants to change that, do something, that's certainly their discretion, but that's what's carried at this point in time. We will do a separate report to council on that grant program. You know, when we're kind of got all the grants in and we're ready to go to final, but unless you want to amend the amount.
Question, John?
Just a question through you. What was the amount for the grants last year?
I think I thought we were at 25 last year.
Yeah.
Yeah, we were.
That include the Lions Club.
That included the Lions Club in there.
That's what I was just gonna say. I think there could be more requests this year than what we've seen in the past.
Maybe,
So,
yes.
yeah.
And I encourage it. That's the purpose of the grant program.
Yeah.
Check for the questions and grants. No, good.
No, I'll just go back to the deficits or
Deficits?
yeah.
Sure.
I guess because I'm not a bookkeeper, my wife would never let me touch the books, and it's likely a very good thing. I don't understand why we keep. I realize these facilities, BMG, CC and SDCC carry this deficit forward. It's paid for though, correct?
Paid for your working capital, but you guys have to make, but you cash flowed it, but you haven't accounted for it. So you need to come up and say, you could say tonight, if you want to pass a resolution saying, we're just gonna take that out of our working capital, that I can take that to the auditors and the auditors will be happy as pig and poop, good to go. But I'm cautioning you from the standpoint, if you take out working capital, which you've done, you're having a cash flow problem. Right?
But these bills are paid is what I'm saying.
They're absolutely paid.
At the end of the day,
100% correct.
and what you're saying, I mean, we borrowed money. We borrowed money from ourselves, we borrowed money from.
Our working cash flow capital. Working cash flow. Because you have to fund, you can't not, basically, they were unfunded purchases. You did not have budget dollars to do those expenditures. So somewhere in your accounting process, to be open and transparent and follow proper accounting rules, you've got to journal entry those expenses somewhere, which you've not done.
Well, that's like the one I'm not allowed to do books, because I consider it paid, and if I paid it and I was short something else, I move on with the next day, and now I start today at 0 and I don't have a deficit anymore. I guess municipal politics.
But Larry, you borrowed the money from me.
Yeah,
Now I have a deficit.
no, you don't, I didn't borrow from you, you got the money. Okay, no, I just didn't understand why we can't Because it's dragging on and on and on and on, just paper.
Well, it can be,
Yeah, just.
but it has an implication, it's not just a paper shuffle. Good,
Last question, yeah.
okay, thank you. Next section, we talked a little bit about this, waste bin fees, so, I don't know whether council is willing to consider this is an option right now. I'm just using the existing rates. Looking at probably, if you wanted to cover your waste cost essentially at 100%, through your bin fees, a 10% increase to those bin fees would meet that margin. So, so I kind of gave you a sense as to what that would look like. So small 110 right now, if you moved it to 120, medium 185, you went to 200, and a large 270 went to 300, that would probably cover off sort of the tax, the municipal levy portion of waste management for the municipality.
That one makes the most sense to me right off the bat. Raise it, those amounts. It's a user pay system and everybody's being treated fairly. So
Yeah.
I would say, go ahead, Bob.
No, are you done, Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, there
Thank
wasn't
you.
much else to say to it.
Did Waste Management increase their rates? Is that why you're doing this?
Well, they do increase the rates and we've never really been historically what I would call cost neutral. So, we've had some advantages because of the new program, and I think, Deputy Mayor probably can speak to it better than I can, but the whole recycling program, the costs are no longer at the municipality, they're at the user. I think I got that correct. So we saved a little bit last year on that, it was half of a year. Now it's the first full year of implementation. But yes, in terms of our waste collection costs, we're having tipping fee increases at the various landfills that we use, except for our own, obviously, for the McKillop and Gray. But the other wards all use other landfills. And then, of course, the collection cost itself has been increased, and I can't think off the top of my head what their increase was, but it was, cost of living.
I thought we had a 3-year contract with, and then it was gonna,
Yeah, there's 3-year contract, but it was with,
with CPI in it.
yeah,
Oh, I wasn't aware of that, okay. So this increase on the bins
yes,
covers. And so 120, 200, 300.
Yeah.
That covers all of our garbage costs?
It will
There's
cover
nothing
all.
hidden in the budget?
no, we'll cover all our waste management costs. Other than our own waste management costs from each of the departments, right? But for the municipality, for the taxpayers, in terms of what their waste costs are, that we're providing that service to them, yes. So $120 a year.
If there's any spot that I ever get patted on the back that the municipality did the right thing, people are happy to pay that $100 and some a year rather than buy bag tags. They hated bag tags with a passion. Cause on Thursday night, when you went to put the garbage out, you didn't have any.
So we can charge you $10 for your garbage can in the office and not cover the other part. Well, that's a good one.
Okay,
Thank you.
we'll just put that in the parking lot, we might want a motion on that. One of the other things we talked about at the workshop as well is about the allocation of administration. So we marginally, a token amount of money from the administration. So historically, we don't cover very much of our administrative costs through some of our user revenue funded cost centers. And the reality is, and this is common knowledge, administration only exists for the purposes of the services that we provide, right? We're administration, the finance department is processing various invoices and various capital purchase, all that kind of right? But that's the purpose of their existing. That's the reason why they're there. That's why you have a treasurer is tracking all his expenses and putting together his budget. So they exist for purposes of the services we deliver. So those services that are not tax-based, we should make sure that the appropriate portion of the administration cost was included in that. And when we had that workshop, you all kind of agreed that that was the right thing to do, and that I would move forward with that. And so I did do that. And so just for those revenue funded costs, so water, wastewater, sewer, the building department. And daycare is sort of that way, we still has a tax levy. But I made sure it's there because that's how the funding is calculated, is based upon what's your true operational cost, so we made sure that administration is appropriately allocated for that. You know, so that's been done, so that's a bit of a change in terms of what we've done in the previous years. John? Sorry.
So just on administration allocation to different departments, that's all arbitrary? Like you're not making each employee.
No, it's not arbitrary, it's based upon the operational cost, so it's.
So based on dollar value.
Weighted against operational costs. I used last year's, I don't know what this year's were.
So you actually had a formula, you just didn't
I
have
used
10 years.
an approach, a methodology. Yes. Wasn't ours.
Very indiscriminate.
Randomly throw it over here, no, I didn't.
We'll review it, yeah.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Especially if it's sort of in water, because it's.
Next page, please. So going back to the financial strategy, I kind of present, you guys have probably seen this before, so the capital levy, look at over the next 4 years. 2.6 was what we proposed, just the capital levy. 2.6 in 2026, the see in 2027, it's a big hit, well, that's where you're making up for the 2 years that you weren't at 4.2. But when you look at the municipal levies down below, because of some operational variations, you're fairly consistent. So if you look at the municipal levy collectively, including operating and capital levy, you're looking at 8.5, 6.5, 7.2, 8.1, fairly consistent. Right, in terms of that. So that was the strategy that I was trying to put forward. To try to balance out your levies, so you don't get these ups and downs in your levies.
Councillor Fisher.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. When I was listening to this, there was a part that said you reduced the capital levy by 4.7% this year, is that right?
No, I reduced it from 4.2, which is what our asset management plan recommendation is and what we've been typically doing historically. I reduced it to 2.6 to try to balance out the overall municipal levy.
I'm sorry that I heard something and had Sandy write it down for me, that there was a 4.7 reduction in something. So
Well, that
that
would
would
have
be
been-
7%.
That would
instead of-
probably would have been back when I was talking about the operational cost because of the OPP. Right?
Don't think so. I was conversing with that part.
Yeah.
Can you see what it,
The only thing I got there is the 4.2 is the capital levy used to be that. That's the only number. I don't say about reducing it by 4 point anything.
That's what's written down. So you
Okay.
it's removed from capital.
I thought, what I was wondering about was if you reduce the capital levy by, and I thought it said 4.7, what did you take out of it? That we needed to do?
I didn't take anything out. What we've been doing, your 4.2% levy is, well, let's call it your reserve contribution.
No, I don't think it was that bad. I thought it was something else. I won't belabor it. I'll check it again then. Thank you.
Yeah, and give me a call if you do.
Okay.
Yeah. Everybody good? I understand what I'm saying? Okay. Again, just for Sean, if you're listening, it's not the tax rate increase. I want to make that clear. This is the municipal levy increase. Okay, so tax rate is a function of three things. The county levy increase. I spoke with Bernie last week and he said that I think the county's sitting at 8.59 right now. And they're not finished their budget deliberation. So where they'll end up, hard to say. School board, I understand that they're looking at a 0% increase and have for a number of years. Then, of course, the assessment growth. So once we have all of those numbers together, we can essentially go through, do our weighted assessments and determine what the tax rate is, the municipal tax rate or the residential tax rate. Okay, and then we can determine what the increase over last year was. Okay. Any questions on that? If I was to, it's likely probably that it'll probably with the assessment and things like that, you might get it, you're gonna be somewhere in that 6 to 8 range, kind of my guess. Right, my educated guess on where you're gonna be with your tax rate.
Councillor Chartrand.
At our workshop, I had posed the question, if we were to collect the same pot of money that we charged everybody in 2024.
Yeah.
What was the shortfall for 2025? And your response was like $400,000 difference. That we're gonna spend more in 2025 and 2024. And of that 400,000, 340 of it was extra police cost.
I'm pretty sure the figures in the binder that we had showed about $1 million difference from one year to the other.
It was only 400,000.
Not sure exactly what you're referencing, but it might be the capital portion.
No, my question at the workshop was if we just charged everybody the same amount of taxes that we charged them last year. Whatever that total came to for 2024. Would it cover 2025? And if not, what was the shortfall from 2024 to 2025?
Yeah, that's on that table on that revenue stream that showed you that difference between.
The one that's 400,000.
940,000 is saying.
Yeah,
I don't know where to set that.
anyways,
That doesn't sound right to me either, even if I said it, so.
okay, maybe I misunderstood.
Yeah, no problem. I don't know, I can go through the capital plan if council wants me to in terms of this, just, you know, we certainly have, this is the capital plan or the financial strategy that we've been following. Really substantially not changing too significantly. The projects are still there. Staff are, as every year, they do kind of refine it. None of them are really, we've got the big stuff in there. What they're really doing is kind of honing it down into a bit more of the detail. They don't necessarily have a big impact on the reserves of that, but it is pretty consistent with what we've been posing in the past. So we've got some work across the board. So roads, some sewer work, not too much in sewers this year. Obviously your drain assessments that are coming forward. A little bit of maintenance work, of the PW buildings, some PW equipment we did. This was all deferred last year, and so the one tandem we did order last year, which was to be paid this year, so that's done. We've already committed to the grader, that's in the bottom there, and then we got a 1.5 ton replacement that we deferred from last year moving forward, so those are in the capital plan. There are some works that are part of both the recreation centers. I won't go through this long list, but there are just some general capital repairs to some of the parts of the building. The C4 tennis courts are in there, again, they're pending getting some type of a donation funding, 100% funding, and then I think, you know, we can wait and see what that, if we don't get the funding, then we'll look for grants through some stream.
Councillor Fisher.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Back to the recreation centers,
Sure.
please, Brad.
Yep.
Brussels,
Yes.
new electric panel, 100 grand.
128, yeah.
Zamboni, 170.
Correct.
Can the Zamboni, because it's hopefully gonna be electric, come out of the vibrancy fund?
Well, the vibrancy fund can be used for anything for the community, so we typically use that for recreational type things. But you can use some of your green energy fund.
I
So some of the money
found,
off of your solar panels, we've suggested we use that to fund where we use green energy projects, and so the actual capital plan does include, I believe, I have to look it up, but there are some dollars coming from the green energy fund, your green energy reserve, to fund a portion of that electric ice resurfacer.
I thought years ago when we needed a new one for Seaforth Arena, we used the vibrancy fund,
We
Mr.
did.
Mayor, did we not?
We did.
I think we did put some money forward from that, yeah.
Yeah, and the powers to be were amenable to doing that, so why can't we do it this time? Cause the vibrancy fund is flush, is it not?
You've been using it, but you get 220,000 every year, so that 220,000 is kind of going into the general recreation reserves and being used for funding all these recreation costs. We can dedicate it to that one if you want, but.
It doesn't change the bottom line, Bob.
We are using those vibrancy dollars as part of our capital plan.
Oh, okay, I totally misunderstood how that was used, and I thought it had to be approved by the the three groups as well as ourselves for what was used.
No, I think it's funded, but it's just got a purpose for being used for community benefit, as long as that's.
So what, can you give me an example then of where that money goes?
We used it, last year, we used what was in the reserve, what in that vibrancy fund, the full amount, we used to offset some of the roof costs. The SDCC.
And the funders were amenable to that.
They don't, there's no strings attached to it other than it's a community funding stream. Yeah. They don't,
Okay,
we don't report back to them, we don't ask for any kind of report or what you spend the money on.
Actually, Counselor Fisher's right. When it first started, they kind of wanted to know what we were stating the money went towards because they kind of wanted a pat on the back.
They took pictures.
For the fact that they were getting it, but that became old for them, Bob, because it was more of a nuisance and they already knew the money was gone anyways. So they
Okay.
just don't push it anymore, that's all it is.
I wasn't aware of that fact. So what you're saying is that money's spent. You can't use it for the Zamboni or the new panel.
No, there'll be this year's contribution, which we can allocate towards that same money for sure. And whatever stream you want to fund it, you can use it to fund your,
Well, if we take out
But we already showed it as revenue in the budget.
yeah.
Yeah.
But not spent, but just revenue.
revenue, but it's being spent.
Yeah, like, we put all the revenue in there, Bob, we
Yes.
put all the expenses in there, and the money we're trying to raise through taxation is the difference between.
If you don't want to spend the 220,000 vibrancy fund, then I will take 220,000 from the taxpayer. That's my choice.
No, I don't have any trouble spending it. I thought it had to be allocated for specific items.
I'm not aware of that, but
Okay.
we are not sure it meets the requirements in terms of community benefit and anything to do with recreation.
Okay. that's
Okay,
fine.
just before you go on, Deputy Mayor.
It's for you, Brad, or Bernie, to you, Brad. When you're talking about the Zamboni or the ice resurfacer. So are you going to be bidding on it or tendering for an electric one? Is that what I heard? Does that include all the infrastructure to go along with it, charging, et
Yeah,
cetera?
that's the number that was provided to me, so I believe they looked at that in terms of the infrastructure. So you're thinking the charging station.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And a follow-up, please, if I may. Any grants out there for something like that? Or is that being pursued or looked at or
I'm aware of, but you can always keep looking.
as long as somebody is?
They call it back on the car. They're out of money on the electric car one.
The only one that would come to mind would be someone like, Hydro One, if they had some type of grant program. So they do have a grant program, but whether it's eligible or not.
Right.
Or Bruce Nuclear have any?
They don't really have a grant program. They throw money out, but they don't necessarily have grants.
Okay,
They can apply for
yeah, okay.
it. But I'm aware of it.
This isn't battery operated, are we talking about, is it?
Yeah.
Because the ones I've seen, they always had a main cord.
Tether.
Yeah, tether, that, so
Mitchell has a tether, yeah.
there was no batteries involved, I've seen it in multiple arenas. Yeah.
It's old school.
It's not a self-coiling thing, as you drive closer to it, it just coils itself back. So you don't have to replace batteries.
The one I saw in Mitchell.
It won't have the extra weight. It's not the service.
Okay, carry on, Brad.
You're welcome. The Brussels pool, so there's fairly significant work that needs to be done there, so rather than kind of doing it piecemeal, we just figured we kind of go at everything, so we've got the filters, the pump. There's some building repairs as part of our building inspection program that we've done a few years back that needs to be done there, so. And then a heater and of course the pool deck and plumbing. We had this in last year's budget, we were struggling trying to get people to give us quotes to do the work, so we pushed it in this year and we'll give her a kick and go again. But we'll do the whole project together as opposed to piecemeal.
Counselor Fisher.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can some of that come out of parkland?
All these we're using all our parkland as well. We'll get into that in a minute here.
All right, thank you.
I'm using every dollar we got.
Okay.
Nothing sitting around collecting dust.
Oh, sorry, go ahead, Jeff.
Just a question, Brad, would this be work that would be attempted in the spring prior to the opening? Or would this be something that we would look at as a fall project, just because it seems extensive, the work?
Yeah, it is something that we were trying to coordinate around last year and Dave's somewhat familiar with this, we can certainly try to make some attempts to do it in the spring. So if council obviously approving the budget, but at worst case, it would be the fall. But we wouldn't obviously shut the pool down in the middle of summer. to
Right.
do it.
I think that's it.
So Brussels Cemetery, they've been after it for a while, so they've got a tractor they're looking for. That's the tractor they help use some of the burials and the excavations and things like that to manage that, so. That's 60,000. Seaforth Library, looking for some carpet and paint, I can't remember whether it was the first or second floor, but it's one of the two. HVAC system, we deferred that last year and pushed it off to this year, so that's back on. We also deferred the Cranbrook Hall roof. We deferred that last year. I wouldn't recommend deferring it any further. It's also subject to that Cranbrook group providing 50% of those costs too. So whether that's through a grant or whatever it is they need to work towards that. So that'll be a bit subject to that as well.
Councilor
Challenge, sorry.
Go ahead, Ray.
Yeah, when it comes to the two libraries.
Yeah.
Doesn't Huron County pick up some of that with all of the libraries that are in Huron County? Isn't there a budget that the county has for that?
The budget the county has doesn't even cover all of the hydro bills and stuff like that.
So as far as capital for the buildings, the county doesn't support any of that.
The building is owned by the municipality. They supply the staff, they supply the books, we supply the building.
Okay, I didn't know if there was some kind of a budget from a county level that.
There is, but it doesn't even cover the operating costs of the building itself.
And well, I think you have to take it from the daycare standpoint, they
Yeah.
provide that capital finance. It doesn't seem to be the same.
Well, that's what I thought, you know, they kept the county supplies for the daycare, and I thought maybe they would do it for
The,
the libraries as well.
the problem with the library thing is, and there's so many libraries across the county, all the municipalities hopefully have at least one, if not multiple, like we do. We can give the county more money to give back to us, but that's exactly what happens. And the problem is because Huron East is one of the larger municipalities, we pay a higher percentage than some of the other municipalities. So I'm not really in favor of everybody paying their fair share into it and then only getting a little bit back.
And I think the difference is some of that county funding is coming through from the province. And some of that capital funding comes through. So it's not really the county's taxpayer at all.
No, it's the county's taxpayer dollar.
The capital is.
Yeah, it
Looking for
is.
some money here and there.
All right.
John,
Yeah, just, that seems like a fair bit for a tractor at a cemetery, $60,000, isn't it? I don't know, I'm a town guy, but 60,000 for something to move a little bit of dirt, probably.
Wouldn't call it a little bit of dirt, but it's pretty reasonably based on I know what tractors cost, but.
Okay,
Now look at that, some of the people who are more familiar with farming around here, so 60 grand doesn't get you far in a tractor.
Brenda, go ahead.
Is there one that's available for that kind of use? I can see where John's going on that, like, just for the cemetery. Is there not one in the municipality around Brussels or somewhere where they use?
already have a tractor.
Have one
Yeah.
Yeah.
for the number of times, like I kind of agree.
I just think to have it 80% of the time or 90% of the time for $60,000. But
Yeah. like
they
the shared
dig
one.
deep holes.
Well, last 15 years though.
What all do they use it for?
I think they use it for general maintenance up there.
Like they don't dig graves with it,
I think they fill the graves with it.
fill the graves, but they don't cut grass with it.
I don't think that's it.
No. So basically a little track, utility tractor, little loader.
I got one for sale for 60 grand. Oh,
I'm not buying the bridge.
Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My question was along the same line as Councilor Dalton. I just wondered if there was, I certainly understand that they need it because right now they're using, I believe Doug Schuldeis's tractor to do much of that work. But he's just giving them his tractor to be used. I just wondered if there was an opportunity to share one either with the Public Works or something like that. That's all.
I think we've explored that a bit. I'm not sure there's much opportunity there. Like, the equipment that Barry uses is too big to be in the cemetery. Right, it's too large of a piece of
Half the
equipment.
time.
could barely use it sometimes, I'm sure. Probably not that much, no.
I would think probably more the rec center, like, whatever.
Even the backhoes in the municipality, the front end loaders. Backhoes.
Pretty big though. Town hall, there's a roof replacement, so I think it's the larger flat roof off to the one side over here. We got some more furniture replacement and some renovations, 65. Gonna bring some of the decor up in the building here, so. Capital plan IT computer replacements, so 10 grand, we put 10 grand a year, that's just for staff replacing computers that become unsupported. So we need to replace them. In terms of the fire department, so we got their PPE, that's every year we replace some of the PPE, so we budget 20,000 a station, total 60. We're having some challenges with some radio equipment, particularly in the gray ward. So we're looking at some equipment upgrades. This is really just kind of a first kick at it to figure out what we can do. There might be, the budget actually plans for a bit more substantive costs in 2026. Some accountability boards, we did get some, but I think this is I think was this the one for the central one? This is the main one, right? They just carried around. Exactly. So that's an accountability board. They use that at seams to make sure they can track where the various firefighters are. So that they know who's in and who's out. Hence the accountability board name. And then we've got some further upgrades to the C4 fire hall. So I believe this is some work for the washrooms. And as well, that radio room, if you kind of go on the C4 station, that radio room on the old office there needs some renovation, some upgrades. So that's what we budgeted there. And then, of course, for the economic development, we've got the phase 2 wayfinding signage. The county's not looking to put their portion in. We are like a 3-way split. So we might have to reduce that a little bit. But we'll keep our portion at 25. And then of course, street decorations, we got 5 grand in there. So I think we used to call that Christmas decorations, but I think we're just gonna generalize it to street decorations. So we can use them in whatever capacity that we wanna do, whether it's seasonal, whether it's general decorations. Street signage, not signage, but you know, benches or planters or wherever. Okay. So that's kind of the capital plan. Kind of wanted to give some, this is the piece I think that's important. I know it's hard to see and hard to read, and I'm not gonna read all these numbers. But I kind of wanted to give you a sense as to what happens with some of these reserve balances. I'm gonna focus on each year, the end of year balance. So you can see your kind of bridge, this is your roads, bridges, storm. You can see it's kind of, it dwindles down, but then we start increasing our contributions and it kind of works its way back up. And it goes up and down a little bit, but we're pretty healthy on that one. Public works, you can see there's a few years there, we get down to, you know, the thousands, so 17,000. So we're putting money away, but we're drawing it down. So there's years where we draw it down again in 2028, we're drawing it down to about 95,000. But we know we've got some big purchases there. You're allocating almost $1.6 million. Barry must be buying some graders that year. Okay, community service. Well, this one is pretty tight. We're actually got a bit of some negative balances here. We can kind of see where those capital lines come out. Hopefully we can get some savings and not go into the negative. But you know, we'll resupplement them in subsequent years and get us built back up again. The parkland reserve, you can see I'm kind of using it up, and that's what the province wants us to do, is to keep using that amount up as we go through the years. Now, I've only allocated $8,240 per year to it. That's kind of been an historical average. If we get some subdivision developments here and they do a big cash influx there, that might, you know, push that down some bit there. But there is a requirement there that the province brought forward. I think it was last year, or the year, I think it was the year before, where they wanted us to use, we needed to use up 60% of our parkland fund and use it as opposed to just sitting on it. So that's that one. Administration council, again, that one's our reserves for all our computers and some of the works here. It goes up and down a little bit. Fire, it's also going up and down, so I kind of presented this because I know some of you thought we were stockpiling money as if we were just hoarding it. And we really aren't. We're putting enough money away to be able to fund some of these capital purchases on the individual years, but slowly starting to try to build some up as we go through. Sanitary and water, you're reasonably healthy in terms of your reserves. They seem like a lot of money, but you know, you've got to, we've applied for a grant for a housing enabling fund to upgrade the Seaport sewage plant. And that's gonna use up, if not all, most of your Seaforth reserves for sewer. You'll probably have to, eventually you have to do a debenture for some of it, right? Depending on what the province comes in with the funding program. So it looks healthy, but you know, 1 year, you do some, or 1 or 2 years, over 2 years, you can easily do some fairly big capital upgrades. Okay? Any questions on that piece? Nope. Okay, I'll finish off operations here and then we can, if you guys got individual questions on, too much detail here. But if you got individual questions on the actual sheets, I can sit down and try to answer them. As done before, a portion of the administration cost was allocated to non-tax or revenue-based cost centers. Some of the smaller cost centers for Sportsville Parks community halls have been consolidated to make the budget a little bit easier to manage. We created what's called roads administration. It's been separated from roads operation. That helps us better in terms of reporting to the FIR, so the financial information return. We've also allocated wages to the first time to the road winter control. So FIR actually looks at what your road winter maintenance costs are, and ours is always undervalued from a standpoint compared to our peers, because we weren't reporting our wage costs. We were carrying it all on our roads general operations, which on the FIR was being reported as your general regular road summer maintenance. So we have to make sure that we're distributing it accordingly. And what we'll do in 2025 is based upon our new payroll system, is we'll start tracking the staff in terms of how many hours they spend on winter control, and their hours will get allocated to that job, or to that job code, or to that general ledger number. And we'll have a that's my grammar tonight. We'll have a better understanding of what winter maintenance costs truly cost, as opposed to just bearing all the wages in their post operations. Committees and grants are now wholly in the council. Cemeteries have also been consolidated for budget purposes. And then in terms of the municipal operations, they're generally divided into 2 types of costs. So the municipal tax fund cost center, so that's the municipal levy portion, and then your revenue fund sources. I won't go to this list, but there are certain services that council, obviously administration, conservation, forest policing, animal control, planning and zoning, economic development, and drains, all are part of municipal levy. As is your community services, all your road stuff is basically part of your levy and fire. What's not part of your municipal levy is your water, wastewater admin, your building department, your hearings health center, your Brussels medical dental, your green energy, and your Seaport community. Green energy is your solar panels, so all your solar panel revenues coming in, and you're setting aside money in reserves for that. Next one is the colorful pie chart. Give you a bit of sense. So I try to break this down a little bit more for you so that you've got a better sense of how it's being distributed. Obviously, our biggest cost center is transportation. With the number of roads we have, and that's probably the biggest municipal service most municipalities do. Your next one is your policing. Then you got community services and fire. So those are the 4 core areas of your service delivery. You still got some administration costs there. I'm going to suggest for 2026, we'll continue to try to allocate some of the administration costs to those, even those tax-based cost centers, to give you a better representation of what it truly is to deliver those services. Waste management, pretty negligible, it'll be 0. if we do go forward with increasing the bin fees. Conservation authority is about 2%, your daycare is about 4%. Economic development is about 2%, so try to break it down as best I could. I didn't necessarily include cemeteries there, it's such a small amount, it's in with the others. Any questions on that pie chart? Is that helpful?
Yes.
It's pretty.
Last slide, next steps. So the next steps for us, we'll make any amendments that the council proposes. One of them might be the bin fee increase. We'll get all the impact data, we'll import that into our weighted assessments and figure out what the tax rates, obviously we can't do that until the county gives us their final number, we can figure out what our tax rate's gonna be, but we won't know the overall is. Once we have that, we'll update our reserve schedule as well, we'll prepare the bylaw, and we'll have our public meeting. The timing will depend upon the Huron County process, I think.
Councillor Stafford.
Yeah, just one thing going through our agenda here, page 167, Jess or Brad.
You want to individual library?
No, on
I don't have mine.
okay, I don't know if anybody has it. It's probably a typo, but just wanted to.
What's the title of it?
67?
167, cost center 5012.
This is individual.
Inspections, repairs and upgrades.
Yeah, so 55,000, but a 1.2 million actual.
I'm gonna, before I answer that, before I even look at it, I'll just kind of give a cautionary that actuals will be whatever was entered in journal entries. And so some of the journal entries might be like, look, like some numbers aren't as high as what's budgeted. Or there might be numbers in there that are higher than what's budgeted, but it could make a journal entry.
Okay, again, just,
So what,
that's the only thing, it's just 55,000 was budgeted, but it's 1.2 million was the actual.
where are you, sorry?
5012,
I don't know pages.
167.
167, sorry.
But it was a count.
167.
What's the page? What's the?
Page 167, the cost center was 5012.
It's the agriculture and reforestation
Okay, thank you.
under operating
Oh, God, here.
inspections, repairs and upgrades.
Yeah. I see that. 5,000 was budgeted.
I have it earmarked here, Brad, if you need to look at it.
Yeah, I got it.
It's nothing I need right now, it's just.
If you go down 3 or 4 lines, John, it's the opposite way. There's 300,000 budgeted and 0 spent.
And
we did
zero
drain.
correct
And we did drains.
for the actual two.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do think this is probably some of that journal entry, especially with
Numbers,
some of the
cost
drain billings.
allocations.
Budget versus
And
actual.
Drain billings that go out, so sometimes we have that in there, we don't know, it's another year until we actually get the revenue from it, right, with the
Okay.
drain,
So that'll be the work that we.
yeah.
Undertaking, so we contract that.
What we drain it down.
Assess those costs back out to the landowners.
Sure, again, no, that's just
It's
something to
probably a
think of,
realistic
there's a reason for it, it's not.
Yeah, it's a realistic actual from the standpoint we've spent that money, we just haven't got the answer. Thanks, sorry. for consuming the other day.
Answer the question first, I mean, with it.
Go ahead, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you to Brad. And it's probably just a typo as well, but one of the, I am working off the sheets on the Seaport and District Community Center. Cost center 3506, it says building permits. Under the Seaport Arena, I'm just wondering if that's, should not be in there.
If I like cut off, I'm sorry. It's probably one of those 5306, what's it in BMG? Is it the same there?
I don't think I've seen it in there, because I looked for it, because I thought maybe it was a description I didn't understand.
I'll have to look it up.
Anyway, just under that one.
Yeah. You have a sense. David, no,
It's not supposed to be in our budget, it's just.
oh, but again, I get it. No, I know.
No.
I don't think the arena issue, but we put that out there, Jeff.
Yeah.
Come back there and let you there.
If I could just, if you're done with it, but I have to ask another question.
Sure.
And it surrounds the fire stations, and it's a charge from the Huron East Fire Chief. So I'm looking at Brussels right now.
Yeah.
And in 2024 it was 49,000. But now it jumps to 192,000.
So that's taking your administration cost, your fire chief and your deputy fire chief, and all their costs associated with there, so that Huron, if you look at the Huron East Fire Administration, you'll notice that that zeroes out all except for the reserve contributions.
Okay,
And you'll see that there's a cost going out from there, so all the operating costs of your administration gets allocated out to each of your stations.
okay,
And that's done because some of those stations we get recovery from some other municipalities.
right,
So we want to make sure we're allocating out those administrative costs, right? And keep the reserves in that category, just because those don't go to the other municipalities, that's our reserves.
right, right.
Okay?
Okay. Yes, that does. Thank you. You still have more. Okay, sorry, I did not.
No, that's okay.
I figured you're on, and so back at the fire stations as well, and see what they're under the cost station of 4,000 salaries and wages. In 2024, you had a total of $406 in there. 2025, you're budgeting 150,000. Is that, what's the difference there?
Before fire,
Yes. No, still numbers. That's a question. And I don't need an answer right now. I just wondered if it was a typo or there was quite a difference there, that's all.
getting there. There we go. So under C4 fire station, you're talking about wages?
Yes, I believe it was. And I think it was 4,000. I said.
Yeah.
Well, the actuals,
The budget, yeah.
Under expenses,
yeah, salaries and wages,
yes, always wages,
that we budgeted 128,610.
in 2024.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And then we went to 150.
the actual was only 406.
Well, that's because when these are generated, we haven't, the wages hadn't been paid out yet.
Okay.
Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Because we paid our wages pretty end of the year, so.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, that's gonna
Okay. Any other questions at this time? Okay, we'll carry on.
I think that's it.
You're done? Okay.
So we want to come back to, that one, with one couple questions in the parking lot.
Yeah, just the waste management, we raise amounts for the bins. You're looking for the motion for that, Brad?
I would prefer a motion, but if council wants to move that.
Moved by John. Second by Diane. Any questions on that? All those in favor? Motion carries. What was the second one?
I just think we have the BMG building permits, which was listed. Kind of what that's supposed to be. I think it's probably a typo. You answered some of the other ones, and I think just for a follow-up. For our next budget discussion would be insurance on parade floats, just to see what's happening with that. Having a buffer for the next OPP increases. And the cemetery tractor, what we can look at are the sharing options or, you know, those type of necessities for that one.
Okay, Brad, so did I hear you tell council correctly that you kind of think you're gonna be somewhere between that 6% and 8%?
That's my best guess, based on all the information in front of me right now. I mean, that depends upon the actual assessment growth. and the county where they end up.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
So-
So what was the code number for that one? The building permit?
There was a building permit one on the seafront.
The code number is
3506.
35, it's
You guys say the numbers too fast, I can't read them.
Okay. This council certainly has time because no matter what we do, it doesn't mean anything until the county does theirs. We can't hand anything out. The other side of it is staff get to move on with other work once they know budget is done and council is done with it. So just a couple of comments. We're certainly not passing anything at this point. We saw our 5-year forecast last year. Staff have come in with lower numbers and even the numbers going forward look favorable. Is there anything in particular that has jumped out at anybody yet? And if there is, whether you have it right now or even over the course of the next couple of weeks, notify staff, send them an email or whatever. Let them look at it. But if there isn't something real specific, other than we do have to correct some numbers, bad entries or whatever, or just misaligned entries. We want at least staff to know that, you know, they're on the right path and they don't have to be working on this day in and day out to get back to other things. That's all I'm asking at this point. Go ahead, Councillor Fisher.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A couple of times surplus, year-end surplus was mentioned. I don't think I've heard a 2023 surplus yet, and I know it's early, but is there any idea what a 2024 surplus might look like and where that would go? Please.
And I can't answer either one of those because they're still doing the year end for 23. So I know Terry's been working on it, but I don't have an answer.
Yep. And if I may, Mr. Mayor, thank you. Daycare, what our year end was for 2023 on daycare and I know there's been some ups and downs with staffing and such in 24, if there was any idea what it might be there for loss or whatever.
Breaking answer for that one, just on that.
Sorry?
I kind of have the same answer on that. I don't know the year end or either year.
Okay.
And so I don't really know. I think there's some positive news that, and this happens on a regular basis with the county, is that at the end of the year, they'll all of a sudden they'll have some extra funds. And they'll start throwing money out to the various daycares that's coming through the provincial funding. We obviously can't budget for it. I believe we got in that neighborhood of about $100,000 just at the end of 2023, which certainly helps in terms of that. So I certainly hope we're gonna end up with a surplus there, but I don't know for a fact that we will.
All right.
Okay.
Go ahead, Bob.
That's right. I forgot to ask during consent agenda. Have we rehired Tammy Martin?
Yeah, we have as a supply person.
Okay, I just yeah. My executive assistant was going over some of the things for me and noticed her name, so.
Yeah, she expressed an interest in being a supply person.
Yeah, she asked me to bring it up. I was just wondering. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Councillor
I didn't
Chartrand.
answer though for the deputy mayor, so that number it gets messed up in the codes through the FMW, which is what Denise mentioned earlier, that's what we use. It's the rent for the heat wave lakers.
Okay, so it's labeled wrong?
Yeah, yeah.
Building permits.
It's close.
Exactly.
Councillor Chartrand.
Yeah, going forward, Brad, and I've asked this now, and Bob kind of touched on it. To get the year in, how we ended up. I've never done budgets before where we don't know if we have a surplus or not at the end of the year. I've asked them 2022, 23, 24. Hopefully now that we got staff in place in budgets in the future, when we're trying to do a budget, it sure would be nice to know if we had a surplus or not.
Right, there's two things that
Year end.
yeah, and a fair question, and I realize that historically, yes, you used to know your actuals from the previous year, but you approve your budget in May. So when I'm approving the budget in December and January, I'm not gonna know what my actual and final are for the year previous. You just aren't gonna know for 2 years. And we're still doing journal entries, we're still getting invoices from people, you know, getting their invoices for, you know, 2024 for, you know, June and January. Well, that's the nuance, it, you won't know what your year-end surplus from the previous year, obviously you should know what 23 is, and we are on, yes.
Yeah.
But you would know that, but you won't know for the previous years and try to prove the budget.
And you know, like the new girl there, Denise, she touched on a good point. If everyone's doing a quarterly review.
Yeah.
To your budget, and that's how we used to do it. I gave Larry a budget and we agreed on the budget, and at the end of each quarter, we review it. How are you doing to your budget? So there's no surprises at the end.
And you've had those quarterly reports, so you were given, I think the last one was the first 6 months, or no, you had a quarter for the third quarter. And, you know, basically things were tracking fairly well, right?
Just it
But
seems
to stay with you, you got a surplus deficit. I mean, it's tracking well, and it means that you're on budget, it doesn't mean that you're gonna be, you know, you're not gonna get this huge cash influx. You're not, you may be slightly over, depending on how much Barry spends on winter maintenance.
But what could happen is, in this particular case, we could approve the 2025 budget. And you could come back later on and say, oh, by the way, we had a surplus of $200,000.
But you should not be using your surpluses to offset your next year budget. 'Cause
No,
that's-
well, we could use the surpluses to take care of deficits.
You could absolutely. You should actually put that money away. There's a bunch of things you can do with surpluses.
Yes.
You should put the money, pay your deficits. You should actually put the money away into what I'll call a deficit reserve. So if you ever have a year that you actually, Barry's winter maintenance goes through the roof or whatever, you've got some money to offset. So you don't make it, if you go into a deficit situation, you have to fund it the next year's budget.
I just think it's an important piece
I
of
don't
information.
disagree with you, I 100% agree, but you make that decision subsequent to your budget, you should not incorporate it into your budget, other than the deficit. Try not.
We already got it.
Okay, any other questions about the budget presentation before we move on? Councilor Fisher.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You were talking earlier about PUC reserves. Water and sewer reserves, sorry, water and sewer reserves. Are we looking at, those rates being adjusted in the near future, or?
Yeah, your 2026 is your last year, I believe it's 26. 26 is the last year of your previous budgeting. So you will need to read it. And based upon operating costs, so you did that strategy back, what, 5-6 years ago? Operating costs have been at a higher level than what you predicted in that financials. So what's happening is you're shrinking your reserve contributions based upon that financial.
No, I heard you say that, so do we need to do a little tune-up on them this year or next year?
I wouldn't do it this year, I would just make sure that we probably do something next year as part of it, get the financial strategy done and maybe you implement it a little bit earlier. So you adopt the financial strategy and we have it planned for doing the financial strategy this year. You'll do it this year, you can adopt those new rates for 2026 and not get your own. Back on track.
Thank you.
Okay, if we're good with that, that was received for information purposes only. Move on to 13.1 Brussels and District Horticultural Society. Can I get a mover and a seconder for the motion, please? Moved by Councillor Wilby, second by Deputy Mayor, that the Council of the Municipality of Huron East direct Public Works to continue with the watering and fertilizing of plants in Brussels for 2025, and that the grant request be included for consideration in the 2025 grant process. Comments or questions? Any comment, Barry?
No.
Okay, all in favor? Can I get a mover and a seconder for 13.2 Brussels Minor Ball Executive Committee? Councillor Deal, Councillor Steffler, that the Council of the Municipality of Huron East approve the request from Brussels Minor Ball to close a portion of Sports Drive Brussels on May 31st, 2025 from 7 AM to 9 PM for Brussels minor ball day. Comments or questions? All in favor? Carried. I have nothing under unfinished. I'll go to council's report and Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So at the county, we started the process to purchase the land needed for the new roundabout at the intersection of Highway 83 and Airport Line. So we're just negotiating that, getting that nailed down. Also looking at buying an 8-passenger accessibility van for use at the homes for the aged. We did purchase 2 new ambulances for the price of $647,000. That's a single supplier purchase, so there's only one ambulance maker that actually makes ambulances that are suitable for us. We also accepted a tender from All Truck International in Godrich for the purchase of 3 tandem plow trucks, complete with the one-way plow and wing. Their tender price of $1.2 million. That was for the 3 of them. The new county work shed in outside Wingham there should be ready to March of this year. In our last meeting, we had an aggregate study done for the county. Believe it or not, in all the gravel used in the province of Ontario, 2.5% of that gravel comes from Huron County or produced in Huron County. So that's pretty good. Gray and McKelp were big gravel producers from the study that was done. But Colborne and Godrich Township produced the most. And I think that's what we started doing our budget. We got 1 day in, we're doing our parking lot section right now. We got half it done and we're going to be doing the next week. So I think that's everything I have.
Okay. Are there any other boards, committees, meetings, or seminars that anybody wants to report on this time? Councillor Wilby.
Oh, we did have a heritage meeting. There's gonna be a heritage week, from the week of the 17th. And we have presentations for, people who, recognizing people who have done work on their buildings. But I'm away on holidays, so we've deferred it to the 4th of March.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And this is about committees in general. Usually at halfway through our term, we usually look at our committees, or you look at our committees and move people around or ask people if they're satisfied where they are. And I think we had also talked about putting a rep on the fire board or the current fire department with the chiefs, I believe. We had talked about that.
You are correct in the fact that I used to do it in the fall before the start of the last 2 years. It did not happen last fall. I'm not sure where we dropped the ball on that. And normally they would be in place before January starts. We certainly can try and follow up on that right away. I will ask them to get me a list. If in fact we're going to review this, then I guess if anybody has any requests that they would like to see or possible changes to the committees that they sit on, could you please try and email me in the next week so that I have it and can review it before it comes in. Councilor Sherwood.
I thought, to Justin, I thought that changed in the policy for that. Where we just sit on for the term.
I'll have to double check that. I thought we changed that too.
We did change that.
Oh, okay.
That's why it never came up.
Maybe that's why. Okay. Okay. I'll wait till I hear from Jess.
I'll double check.
If in fact we find out that it has not been changed and it's still done every 2 years, yes, we'll just send a quick email to council members so that they can drop a note. Okay. Are there any other, any requests by members at this point? Councilor Fisher.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First of all, I'd like to thank Mr. Mills and Public Works for putting up the Christmas decorations and taking them down and helping out the BIA, and then also for the great work they're doing again this year to keep the snow off Main Street so we can have happy shoppers and happy merchants. Thank you very much. And my other one, Mr. Mayor, if I may, I was totally gobsmacked with our surplus property bylaw. I thought it only covered, small items like road allowances and such, et cetera, so I wondered if there was an interest from my other counselors, fellow counselors, to have, Jessica just go over it with us again at a future meeting, just so we're all conversant with it. This, family health team RFP thing, totally blindsided me.
Okay, so you're referring to basically, an education, presentation?
Yeah, just to go over it with us again. I realized we did pass it and I was awake during that,
That's the one that's called the.
but I didn't understand it, I guess, because I was blindsided by, what occurred with the family health team.
Okay.
Can I just get an official motion so we don't lose track of that? request?
Yeah, I
Okay,
realized,
so-
I
so
would
moved
move
by
it if
Councilor
someone would
Fisher.
second it, please.
Second by Counselor Deal. That, we get an education update on the surplus. Current policy for surplus property in the municipality, or how to deal with it.
Thank
All
you.
those in favor? Most,
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
no problem. Are there any notices of motion at this time for anybody? Counselor Chartrand?
Now, there's one on the agenda there.
There is.
So this motion I put forward, this motion is to protect the safety and well-being of town hall personnel, council members, and the general public. The seriousness of these incidents involving Daniel Melick necessitates immediate and decisive action. And I ask, I know it's a little bit lengthy, I ask when you do the motion, to read the entire motion for the benefit of people that are online watching.
No, I have read it and I think it's appropriate for, what council and staff have had to deal with over the years. I was shocked a number of years ago when I walked in and there was a new locked gate at the front counter, to avoid certain people from walking in and, doing whatever they wanted to. And,
Why making
when
that
things like that
why
have to
making that
happen,
motion?
it's times to make changes. I have a motion moved by Councillor Chartrand. Do I get a seconder for this motion? Second by Councillor Fisher. The motion reads, whereas the safety and security of the town hall premises and its occupants are of utmost importance. And whereas recent actions and behaviors of Daniel Melick have raised serious concerns regarding the safety and security within the town hall. And whereas there is documented evidence regarding incidents, it's written, involving Daniel Melick that justifies restrictions to ensure the safety of municipal staff, officials, and visitors. Be it resolved that Daniel Melick residing in Seaforth, Ontario is hereby prohibited from entering town hall premises located at 72 Main Street South, Seaforth, Ontario, indefinitely / until further notice, and that this motion authorizes municipal staff to refuse entry or remove Daniel Melick if found on the premises, and local law enforcement will be informed and asked to assist in enforcement as necessary, and that a trespass order be issued to Daniel Melick by registered mail and copied to the Huron County OPP, and that this ban remain in effect until the conditions set forth, unless rescinded or amended through council action. Comments or questions? Deputy Mayor.
Mr. Mayor, it's just, I totally agree with everything that's there. The thing that surprised me that night in question last year, there was stuff brought to the doorway and left there. And some of us council members maybe didn't even know what took place. So I just would like, if something was happening, be nice sort of communication to all of us so that we know, because some of us could have left that night not realizing there was stuff left there with our picture or whatever. So that's the only thing, but that's just a comment.
Okay, I did have one question. I do not disagree with the motion. I have a question of, it's a ratepayer in this municipality. If they have a legitimate reason to actually come to town hall to do town hall business, is there an avenue for that to happen? if a ratepayer wanted to come to the counter to pay their tax bill, what would be the avenue to address that? Councillor McGrath.
Send your neighbor.
There's a mail slot in the door.
The other thing is, with this motion as you read, you could almost consider anything to come into the town hall if you wanna leave it loosey-goosey, right? Like you come in and just have an inquiry about something, whatever. It would be pretty loose. Like you'd have to almost describe what he could come in to do. And that's it.
I'm not trying to cause a problem. It was just the one thing that popped into my mind when I read the bylaw earlier.
I agree 100%, like, but that's the only thing, like, you almost have to have a whole list of stuff that you can and can't do, like, it can get pretty complicated.
Okay, I don't have any problem with letting this stand, and if something is challenged, we can deal with the challenge at that time. Councillor Stefan.
The individual always has the right to go to law enforcement and has to be accompanied.
Good point. Okay. If there are no other questions at this time, all those in favor of the motion? And motion carries. Thank you. Are there any announcements at this time? Councillor Stefan.
Yeah, so just off the OPP side of things, Detachment Commander Jason Noonan has issued his resignation, being replaced January 20th on an interim basis by Craig Sheldon. Detachment Commander Noonan just thanks everyone, and he's moving to critical incident thing. So he's been with us for 10 years, and I can honestly say he's an excellent person for the role, and he'll continue to thrive going on. So just letting people know that we'll have a new detachment commander for OPP effective January 20th.
Thank you for that. Under bylaws, can I get a mover and a seconder for bylaw number 1 of 2025? Councillor Deal, second by Councillor Dalton. That be it hereby resolved that bylaw number 1 of 2025, a bylaw to authorize a service agreement with the corporation of the County of Huron for daycare service be given first, second, third, and final readings, signed by the mayor and the clerk, and the seal of the corporation be affixed thereto. All those in favor? Carries. Mover and a seconder for bylaw 2. Deputy Mayor, Councillor Wilby, that be it hereby resolved that bylaw 2 of 2025, a bylaw to establish the fees and charges to be collected by the municipality of Huron East be given first, second, third, and final readings, signed by the mayor and the clerk, and the seal of the corporation be affixed thereto. All those in favor? Motion carries. And a mover and a seconder for bylaw 3. Councillor Deal, Councillor Stepler, that be it hereby resolved that bylaw 3 of 2025, a bylaw to temporarily close a portion of Sports Drive within the Brussels ward be given first, second, third, and final reading, signed by the mayor and the clerk, and the seal of the corporation be affixed thereto. All those in favor? And motion carries. And a mover and a seconder for bylaw number 4.
No, sorry,
Sorry.
we have to go back into closed session.
Oh, right. Forgot
So we'll
about
get that
that.
motion, and then I can end my.
Can I get a mover and a seconder to go back into close? Councillor Wilby and Councillor Chartrand, all in favor? Motion carries. We'll give staff a couple minutes.
I get that amended too, to have Mr. Mills also stay in for the bridge